This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them.
In case you missed it, check out my last video on the amazing Barbatus Lupus and be sure to subscribe for more reviews if you enjoyed this. Also, I just hit 200 subscribers and I'll be doing a quick Q&A for the milestone, so if you click the link in the description and drop me a quick question if you have one, it would be very appreciated. Also to note, throughout this review, I will be referring to each of these as follows: Sinanju, Stein Verka, and Stein Narrative, with the one I'm reviewing right now being referred to as the Narrative Verka. Now onto the review. The Narrative Verka is the newest kit in the MG Verka line, and it's quite of a monster of a design, but that shouldn't be surprising if you've been building Gunpla for a while, and that's because this kit is technically already been released in the past. The original Stein Verka was released... oh my, it's been a while. Despite the age of the frame itself, it's aged pretty well for the most part. The construction is quite solid and the inner frame is very detailed as well, not to mention that it comes in this unique brownish gray color scheme that contrasts really well with the gray armor, which is also really nicely detailed. The part separation in the armor is also incredibly beautiful with a few different shades of gray, and you can also see the eyes here, but they're a bit hard to see from a distance though. You also of course get the cockpit opening gimmick where you can see the pilot Sultan Akanen inside. The thrusters on the backpack here are also really nicely detailed, and you have a great deal of articulation on them too. Both of these parts here have a lot of movement thanks to this piece that attaches to the middle part of the backpack. This top armor piece is also on a ball joint, which allows it to move freely up and down, as well as the armor parts on the bottom, which allow them to move down. And the fuel tanks also can be moved however you please. One of my biggest issues but also pros with this kit is the addition of these pre-molded posable hands. If you're familiar with the previous versions of the Stein, the MG RX-78-2, 3.0, Jesta, etc., you would know that these can be a pain to deal with at times. They essentially have the posability of normal human hands on one hand. Sorry. When they work perfectly fine with no issues, they're some of the best hands you can get access to, freely posing them in whatever positions you please. Not to mention that with its tab system it has with the other weapons, it makes it really easy to hold them in hand without having to worry about them ever falling out. On the other end, if the fingers fall out, it becomes quite a pain. I had one incident in particular with the MG RX-78-2 3.0 where I had one of the fingers fall out, and then I just never was able to put the finger back into the hand properly ever again, and when I tried moving it around it would just keep falling out. So needless to say, they're very delicate. I find that the quality of these hands tend to be quite inconsistent. Even after the fingers fell out of the hands I got with the Narrative Verka, I didn't really have too many problems moving them around after, unlike the aforementioned MG RX-78-2 3.0, which I had a lot of problems with. While the newer design used in the Narrative Gundam Verka does not have individually moving fingers, it's way more stable of design and also one that I find holds weapons a lot better. Now build wise, this was a really nice experience overall. What wasn't so nice was the amount of runners I had to deal with. It goes from A to T and there's 2 different J runners. I have a runner organizer that was good enough for most MG kits, but somehow there was still a pile left for this one. So sifting through all the runners and finding the parts was a bit of a task at times. So if you do plan on getting this kit, I would strongly recommend finding a way of organizing your runners better than me. The legs in particular have a lot of moving parts and do take quite a time to put together. The layering of the parts here is incredible, and to see the final product here in action, you can't help but be proud of the engineering put together for this product. Also, the fact that a lot of design has existed all the way back in 2013 with the original Sinanju Stein, it starts to make sense why Bandai didn't decide to redesign the entire kit from the ground up when this one already exists. The big new thing with the new Stein is the addition, of course, of the fully color corrected sleeves. They're very nice and simple to put together, however they still have a seam line going down the middle of the sleeves as well as the fuel tanks and the back of the head as well. Most of the nub marks are in places that aren't too obvious, but there is one spot here on the torso that can be a problem if you don't clean it up very well. The navy blue parts in particular are pretty bad when it comes to stress marks, so be prepared to spend lots of time cleaning those. Now if you've seen any review of the MG Stein narrative version, you would know there are also a ton of extra parts that it comes with. This kit is no exception, and if anything, it comes with more. Most of these parts are from the Stein Verka and a bit from the MG Sinanju. Some highlights include this crotch part from the MG Sinanju, the smaller fuel tanks, the almost complete shield, and the full frontal 1/100 scale pilot figure. If you like kit bashing, the extra parts can be used useful. However, if you don't, tough luck, because in case you don't know, Bandai charges based on the amount of plastic, so the extra parts just add up to the total cost of the kit. So for reference, the original is 7,000 yen, the Master Grade Narrative Stein is 7,500 yen, while the latest one is 8,000 yen. Granted, inflation likely plays a factor here, but 1,000 more yen for the same kit with few changes seems a bit much. Now, what is better though are these stickers included. If you've seen the original sticker sheet for the Stein narrative version and compare this to the new version, it's a pretty clear-cut improvement. The thrusters here on the side still need color correcting stickers on them, which can be a pain to get on, so if you have the option to paint, do it. It also comes with a sheet of water slide decals, which mostly consist of markings. Now for a quick size comparison. Here it is next to the MG Sinanju OVA, MG Narrative Gundam Verka, and the MG Charzaku 2. So it's a lot larger than the average MG kit. Articulation for this kit is pretty standard for most MG kits, with an exception of a few different areas. So here we got a double jointed neck, and the head can lift up this high. It can also move pretty much all the way around, but the back of the head here also does get in the way sometimes. The shoulder pad can be lifted up like so, and the arms can be raised up this high. This secondary shoulder piece over here can also be raised up this high as well. You have a double jointed elbow bend hand on a ball joint here. So as mentioned before, each of these fingers are individually articulated, and you got 1, 2, 3 points of articulation per finger, as well as movement here in this wrists. I'm not going to show you the articulation for each finger because I feel like that's going to take a little bit too long, but just so you know what it looks like, this you can kind of just fold up these fingers all the way like this. These front skirts are on ball joints and they can move up, down, and side to side like this, as well as the side skirts as well, but the mobility on these parts are slightly more limited than the front skirts, so not much movement here. The back skirts here are also pretty considerable amount of movement as well. They're also on ball joints, they can be moved out to the side like this as well, but not very much. There's also a little sliding gimmick underneath the legs here, which allows the leg over here to move around this. It also kind of locks in whenever you move into each end, so it doesn't really move around very much. And with the side skirts on, the legs can be raised up around this high, so you get a pretty nice split over here as well. And they can also go out forward around this far and back this far with the back skirt on, of course. So you also get a swivel in the thigh over here, and a really nice double jointed knee bend, of course, and you can see the armor separation here. Of course, you also get the thrusters can also move out like this, and they can also move around depending on how you please as well. You can also lift these thrusters here on the back, so this part here is articulated individually. So the ankle guard over here can also be moved up like this. It's on a hinge. The feet are also on a ball joint to the side a little bit. There's also quite a bit of articulation here on the foot. The toe in front of here can be moved, can move here. This middle section can also move up and down as well. Torso itself doesn't have that much articulation. There's a slight ab crunch, but there's not much. Side to side movement is basically non-existent. You can, however, twist this all the way around. Now let's talk accessories, which you get quite a bit with this kit. First, you get the narrative version of the beam rifle, and it's a combination of both the original Sinanju beam rifle and the Stein beam rifle bundled into one. Like the Sinanju beam rifle, you can also have this part where you can put the bazooka and grenade launcher underneath. Also important to note, the regular Sinanju beam rifle is also built under here. To get it in hand, the beam rifle uses this special holding hand just for the beam rifle because it's not compatible with the movable hands, which is very simple. Just sandwich them in like other MG hands and there you go. The bazooka here also has a very nicely molded design, and it comes with a ton of different gimmicks depending on how you want to use it. The form I have it in right now is its normal form, and to get it in hand, simply flip tab in both the hand and the grip of the bazooka, and put the grip of the bazooka and wrap the fingers around the grip, and now you're holding it. One recommendation I do have with this bazooka is that you push down at the bottom here and then bring it down. What I noticed is that when you try to bring it down without pushing it, the grip seems to get stuck, and I had this issue with the original MG Sinanju where I didn't do that and it almost broke off, so be careful of that. It also comes with a second handle here next to the scope that allows you to hold the bazooka with two hands. Also, the second hand handle is a bit loose. I'm not sure if it's an issue of just mine though. It also comes with a nicely detailed magazine removal gimmick, which you can get by sliding this part back here. You can also start it on the back for the waist here, but the connection here isn't the most stalled and it looks a little bit awkward. You can also combine it with the beam rifle by taking off the scope here, compressing it, unclip this piece in the beam rifle and insert the bazooka in and clip the entire thing back. Make sure that the connection here is secure on the bottom of the beam rifle as well. You can also freely extend the bazooka in this form as well. The main issue I have with this form is that it makes the rifle really heavy, and while this kit can hold it with one hand, balancing it can be a bit difficult due to the weight. So it might be better just to hold it with two hands in a resting position, or just using an action base to support it like the one included in action base 4, or just getting a completely separate stand. The shield here is also pretty nicely detailed on the front and the back, and of course it does have color separated Neo Zeon logo on the front. It clips onto the arm really nicely thanks to the groove here, and it stays on super securely. It also has a swivel joint here so you can freely adjust the positioning. You can also attach the grenade launcher to the back of the shield. You also get two beam axes, and the handles on both parts are pretty nicely detailed. They can also be held in each hand, and they also come with a secondary longer beam axe effect which can be switched out very easily. They can also be combined with this extra piece for this dual beam axe effect. The beam axes can also be stored on the back of the shield in two different ways, one where the beam axes are not activated and the other one where they are. Now all you have to do after this is insert the beam axe effect part, and there you go. Now I know I said that there's an activated mode and unactivated mode, but I don't think it really matters too much here. It just kind of depends what you want. You can actually just put the beam axe effect in the quote-unquote unactivated mode as well. And what I really like about this feature with the beam axes and the shield is that you can kind of customize the accessories based on what you like, thanks to the fact that you get access to two different types of beam axe effect parts and multiple positions to store the beam axe onto the shield itself. Although I did find that you can't store the beam axes on the same side of the shield, so there is some limitations of this. Lastly, you can also get a pair of beam sabers which fit in hand by flipping this tab here, putting them in hand like the bazooka. They can also be stored in the arm, but unlike the Stein Verka, you can't use the beam tonfa gimmick because of how the parts are attached. So as I was editing this video, I did find out that the beam tonfa effect does work, but the connection itself isn't the most secure, and the beam effect itself just kind of bends out a little bit. You might be able to get it to work if you cut out the part of the plastic here, but honestly I personally can't be too bothered to do this, but if you do, let me know in the comment. Now with the main review out of the way, I'm going to be comparing the Stein Narrative Verka with the two other versions. Keep in mind I don't own the two other kits, so I may miss a thing or two along the way, but personally I feel like this part of the review is still necessary to gauge which one is the best. Now the first difference you might notice with the Stein Verka is that the original Stein has this white color scheme compared to the gray one of the narrative version. So you'll also notice that the lack of sleeves on the original as well, and the design of the beam rifle, shield, and fuel tanks are also different. It also doesn't come with the underbarrel bazooka gimmick with the rifle and beam axes, as well as different colored beam sabers. Now the MG Stein narrative is a bit more similar to the new Verka with a few more changes, the biggest being the switch between the thicker sleeves to fully color corrected sleeves, which is great for idiots like me who don't know how to do a reverse watch technique and generally easier to deal with for everyone else. Another major change is the addition of the pilot Zoltan Akanen. So in the original release of this kit, it actually does come with the full frontal pilot and of the regular Sinanju, and funnily enough in the manual you're supposed to keep the pilot seat completely empty. Another similarity to the Verka with the NG narrative is the massive amount of extra parts that comes with. However, with the Master Grade narrative, it seems like you're able to make the original Stein beam rifle as well, and it also doesn't come with the beam axes. Even though the design of this frame is very impressive for its time, it's starting to show its age now when compared to newer kits like the Zeta Verka and the narrative Gundam Verka. Granted, despite being 11 years old now, the gap between the newest designs today and this one is surprisingly not as big as you would expect. I thought based on previous experience the fully articulated hands would really be the death of me here, but surprisingly I've really grown to like them a lot. While there are certain quirks that newer, more polished MG kits don't have, particularly the lack of torso articulation, the complexity of the design itself, and how solid and fun the build is, still makes it a top tier choice for MG still to this day. So for me, it's still a really easy recommendation even among a sea of solid MG kits coming out in the past 5 to 10 years. While between the MG narrative and the narrative Verka, it's pretty clear that the Verka is superior, I feel like it's a bit more debatable between the Stein Verka and the narrative Verka, which comes down more to personal preference. Although I do think that the narrative Verka Sinanju is probably the best out of the three, mainly due to the amount of accessories that you get with the narrative version and the amount of customization that you can use with that version, specifically with the B-Maxes and the shields. If you are a fan of MGs and you haven't picked up an MG Sinanju Stein or any Sinanju for that matter, this kit is always a great choice. But if you already have a sign for Ka or the Master Grade narrative, maybe it's best that you pass up on this release. I don't really know if it's worth having 2 Steins, let alone 3, unless you're that big of a fan of this kit. If you are thinking of only getting one of the Sinanjus, I think this is the best choice overall. Thanks for watching. This kit took a lot longer to put together than I originally expected, so this review might be coming out a little later than I originally anticipated. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel and be sure to submit a question that I told you about at the beginning of the video if you haven't done that yet. And that's it. I'll see you next time, probably with a review of the Infinite Justice Type 2, so look out for that. Consider checking out this video from my channel that YouTube thinks that you might like.